The broken shield, the battlefield, was on fire. Above him, the sky was broken, full of falling ships and burning debris. Below, the ground shook with every explosion. He could barely hear his own breath over the roar of war. He crouched behind a half-destroyed wall, gripping his small toolkit. The metal was hot under his hands. The air smelled of smoke and blood. Just one more minute, he muttered to himself. A girl lay in front of him, her back against the wall. She was wounded, her shoulder burned, and her cheek streaked with blood, but her eyes stayed calm. She did not cry or scream. Her shield device, a small disc on her chest, was sparking and cracked. Without it, the enemy's energy blasts would burn through her body in seconds. "Can you fix it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He looked at her, then at the shield. It was alien tech, but he was good at fixing things. Humans were good at fixing things. "I'll try," he said. He opened his toolkit and pulled out a tiny soldering rod and a strip of copper. His hands shook a little. This was not just another broken machine. This was a person. And not just any person. She was different. He could feel it dot above them. A giant enemy ship passed, its lights scanning the ruins. He ducked lower, working faster. Sparks flew as he pressed the copper into place and twisted two wires together. "Hold still," he said, though she hadn't moved at all. He could feel her eyes on him as he worked. They were strange eyes, bright silver, almost glowing, like moonlight on water. "You're not like the others," he said before he could stop. Himself. She tilted her head slightly, studying him. "Neither are you," she replied. He didn't know what that meant. A loud boom shook the ground again, and a chunk of ceiling crashed just meters away. Dust and smoke filled the air. His hands moved. Faster now, his heartbeat loud in his ears. The shield device sparked one more time, and then, with a low hum, the crack in it began to close. The soft blue light of the shield spread over her body again. "Done," he whispered Dot. She looked down at the shield, then back at him. Her lips curved into a faint smile. "Thank you," she said. He sat back, wiping sweat from his forehead. "You're welcome," he said, though he was still staring at her. Dot. Then she leaned closer, her silver eyes shining even brighter now. "Will you fight for me?" she asked. Dot. He froze. "What?" She didn't repeat herself. She just watched him, waiting, as if his answer would decide something much bigger than just them. Outside, the sound of footsteps and metal boots grew louder. Enemy soldiers were searching the ruins now, their drones buzzing through the air. One of them floated past the broken wall, scanning. He grabbed her hand and pulled her down lower, pressing his finger to his lips. She let him hold her hand, but she didn't take her eyes off him. "We can't stay here," he whispered. "They'll find us." She nodded, as if she already knew. He peeked around the wall. The street ahead was full of smoke and moving shadows. But behind them, a narrow maintenance tunnel. Dark, maybe safe. "Come." "On," he said, and he started crawling toward the tunnel. She followed without a sound, moving quickly despite her injury. When they reached the tunnel, he pulled open the grate and helped her climb down first. The metal ladder groaned under their weight, but it held. The tunnel was cold and damp, lit only by faint emergency lights. He took a breath of the stale air, trying to calm his racing heart. They were alive. For now, she stood there in the dark, her silver eyes glowing faintly. "Who are you?" he finally asked. She looked at him, quiet for a long moment, then said, "Someone they can't catch alive." He swallowed. "And who are they?" "You'll see," she said softly. Dot. Suddenly, a noise echoed through the tunnel, a loud metallic clang from above. They both looked up. More drones, maybe soldiers too. They didn't have much time. Keep moving, she told him. He started down the tunnel, but her words from earlier stayed in his mind. Will you fight for me? He didn't know the answer yet, but something deep in his chest already whispered, yes, Dot behind him. Her quiet footsteps followed, and the faint blue glow of her shield lit the dark walls as they disappeared deeper into the tunnels, leaving the broken battlefield behind. Asterisk escape and secret's tunnel seemed endless. Every step echoed through the narrow metal walls, each sound making his heart beat faster. He could feel the heat of the battlefield fading behind him, but the danger didn't fade. It was still there, heavier now, closer somehow, like invisible eyes watching them in the dark. She walked just behind him, quiet, calm, like she already knew what waited ahead. Her silver eyes glowed faintly, and the soft blue light from her repaired shield shimmered around her like a fragile bubble. But even with the shield, he could see she was tired. Are you okay? He asked softly, glancing over his shoulder. She looked up at him, her face unreadable. I don't break so easily, she said, but her steps slowed just slightly. They reached a fork in the tunnel. One path went deeper underground, the other slanted upward toward faint daylight. He hesitated. Which way? He asked Dot. She stepped past him and pointed to the deeper path without looking back. Why? He asked Dot. She finally turned her head to him and whispered, because they expect you to go toward the light, and you're not like them. He didn't fully understand what she meant, but he followed anyway. Something about her voice left no room for arguing. Dot, as they descended, the air grew colder. Thin streams of water dripped from cracks in the ceiling. Strange, ancient symbols were carved into the walls, symbols he'd never seen before, glowing faintly as they passed. He reached out to touch one, but she grabbed his wrist, stopping him. Don't, she said sharply. Her silver eyes locked on his. He swallowed and nodded. What are they? He whispered. Dot. She released his hand but didn't answer. Instead, she walked ahead, her fingers brushing against the air just above the carvings as if reading them silently. Then suddenly, she stopped. Her shoulders stiffened. He stepped closer. What is it? She didn't move. Her eyes stared into the dark ahead. He followed her gaze and froze. A figure stood there at the end of the tunnel. It wasn't human. It was tall and thin, with armor that shimmered like black glass. Its head tilted slightly, and its eyes glowed a deep red. The air around it seemed to ripple. He instinctively stepped in front of her. Who? He started, but the figure raised a long, sharp hand. A chilling voice filled the tunnel, though its mouth didn't move. Return what is not yours. He felt her hand touch his back lightly. Don't speak, she whispered. The figure took a slow step forward. Its footsteps didn't make a sound. Another step, and another. He could feel the air growing colder, heavier. Then, suddenly, the girl pulled something from the small pouch at her waist. A glowing cube, the same one he had noticed earlier. It pulsed softly, white and gold. She held it out just far enough so the figure could see it. The figure froze. It belongs to no one, she said, her voice steady, and you will not take it. The figure tilted its head again, as though amused. You cannot protect it. You are already broken. The girl stepped closer to him, so her shoulder brushed his. That's why I brought him, she replied calmly. His stomach turned cold. Me? He wanted to ask what she meant, but before he could, the figure vanished, melting into shadow as though it had never been there. The air became warmer again. He let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. What was that? He whispered. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she tucked the cube back into her pouch and started walking. He hurried after her. You're going to have to tell me something, he said breathlessly. What's inside that cube? Why do they want it? She stopped then, finally turning to him. For the first time since they met, her calm mask cracked just slightly. She looked sad. Inside this cube, she said softly, is the last piece of something they fear more than anything. What is it? He asked. She stared at him. Hope. He blinked. What? Hope, she repeated, her voice quiet but full of something sharp. Anger, maybe, or grief. And they will burn every star in the sky to make sure no one ever feels it again. He didn't know what to say. The weight of her words hung between them. He wanted to ask more, but then a sound behind them cut through the silence. Clank, and another. Clank. Metal footsteps. He spun around and saw a line of drones gliding down the tunnel toward them, their lights flashing red, weapons aimed. Run, she said simply. He didn't argue. They ran through the narrow tunnel, their boots splashing through water, breath coming fast. The drones fired behind them. Sparks exploded against the walls as bolts of energy zipped past their heads. A blast hit the ground next to him, and he stumbled, but she grabbed his arm and pulled him up again. Just ahead, he saw a faint light, another exit. The tunnel opened into a vast underground chamber. It looked like the remains of an ancient city buried under rock, huge towers of stone and crystal reaching up into the darkness. He stopped, stunned. What is this place? She didn't look at him. She kept walking toward the center of the chamber, her eyes fixed on the largest tower, where it all began, she said quietly, and where we'll make our stand. Behind them, the sound of the drones grew louder, and above them, more red lights flickered to life among the towers. They were surrounded now. He tightened his grip on the small blaster at his side. His breath came fast, but his voice was steady. You said you brought me here because I'm not like them, he said. What did you mean? She turned to face him, her silver eyes blazing in the darkness. Because, she said, her voice like steel, you're human. And they've never beaten a human who still believes he can win. The chamber filled with red light as the enemy closed in. And for the first time, he felt it too, a spark of something deep in his chest. Something they couldn't take from him. Hope. And then he raised his blaster and stood beside her, ready to fight. The betrayal ancient chamber glowed red. The sound of metal footsteps echoed from every corner, and the air trembled with the hum of enemy drones circling above. He stood next to her, his blaster tight in his hands, but his fingers were slick with sweat. The girl didn't move. Her silver eyes swept the shadows calmly, as though she'd expected this all along. There are too many, he whispered. That's not what matters, she replied. Her voice was quiet but sharp, like a blade. He glanced at her, confused. But before he could ask what she meant, a voice boomed through the chamber. Drop your weapons. The sound came from everywhere, bouncing off the walls, making it impossible to tell where it came from. He raised his blaster anyway, aiming at the nearest drone. But then, from behind them, another voice spoke low. Familiar human, don't bother. It's over. He froze. Slowly, he turned. A man stepped out from the shadows. He wore the same uniform as the human engineers, the same symbol stitched into his jacket, but his eyes were wrong. Cold, empty. It was Yalin, one of his own. A friend? Yalin? He asked, stunned. Jalen smirked faintly, but there was no warmth in it. You never did know when to stop, Yalin said. She's not worth it. Give her to them, and we can all go home alive. The girl didn't flinch. She only looked at Yalin with quiet disgust. You already sold yourself to them, she said. Jalen shrugged. Better to pick the winning side. Something inside him, the one holding the blaster, twisted tight. How could you? He demanded. Jalen single quotes smirk grew wider. Because she's not what you think she is. You really believe she's helpless? You really believe she's just some poor fugitive? Wake up. She's a weapon. She was made to kill. It's written in her bones. He glanced at the girl, searching. Her face, but she didn't deny it. Her silence was louder than any words. But then she finally spoke, her voice calm but cold. Yes, she said, I was made to kill. But now I choose who I kill for. The words hung in the air like thunder. Jale and laughed bitterly. And you think she chooses you? He scoffed. You're nothing. Just another human who thinks he can change. Her story. She'll turn on you too, just like she turned on them. The man tightened his grip on his blaster. His heart pounded in his ears. He didn't know what was true anymore, but he did know one thing. He couldn't let them take her. You're wrong, he said through his teeth. She's more human than you'll ever be. Jalen's smile vanished. His eyes darkened. Then you'll die with her? He spat. The drones moved all at once, swooping down with sharp claws and blinding. Lights. Run, she shouted. But he didn't run. He fired. Bolts of blue light shot through the air, striking two drones and sending them crashing to the ground. The girl leaped forward, moving faster than he thought possible. Her repaired shield flared bright as she slammed into the nearest drone, shattering it with one blow. But Yalen wasn't watching the fight. He was moving toward her pouch, reaching for the glowing cube. No, the man shouted. He lunged forward and tackled Yalen to the ground. They wrestled in the dirt, Jalen's fingers clawing at the pouch, his face twisted with rage. You don't even know what you're protecting, Yalen hissed. I don't care. The man shot back with a final shove. He threw Yalen off and rolled to his feet. But Yalen was already reaching for a hidden knife. Before Yalen could strike, the girl stepped between them. Her silver eyes flashed with a strange, burning light. She raised her hand, and the air itself seemed to warp. A shockwave of energy exploded outward, slamming Yalen into the far wall. Aulien slid to the floor and lay still. The chamber went quiet. The drones hovered for a moment longer, then slowly backed away, retreating into the shadows. He stared at her, wide-eyed, his chest heaving. What was that? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. She looked at him with something that almost looked like regret. What I was made for, she said softly. The man swallowed hard, his hands shaking. You killed him. She shook her head. He chose his side, and I chose mine. She turned away then and walked toward the center of the chamber with the largest. Crystal tower loomed. He followed, though his legs felt heavy. What happens now? He asked. She stopped at the base of the tower and placed her hand against the stone. The crystal began to glow faintly under her palm. Now, she said, her voice distant, we finish what they started. Suddenly, the walls of the chamber began to shift, as if waking from a long sleep. Ancient machines hummed to life, sending streaks of light through the darkness. The man looked around, awestruck and afraid. What is this place? She didn't look back at him. The last weapon, she whispered, and the last chance. But before he could ask more, the sound of footsteps returned. Louder now, heavier, and a deep, mechanical voice echoed through the chamber. You cannot win. Surrender the core. The girl turned to him, her eyes burning silver blue. Do you still believe in me? She asked quietly. He met her gaze, his jaw set. I believe, he said. She gave him the faintest smile, then slipped the glowing tube into a slot in the tower. The ground shook violently. A wave of light shot up through the tower, filling the chamber with blinding brilliance. And then the real fight began. The fight begins. Chamber exploded with light. A beam of white and gold shot up through the crystal tower and into the darkness above. The ground shook, ancient stones groaning, dust raining from the ceiling. He stumbled back, shielding his eyes. The glow from the tower burned brighter and brighter, until it was almost too much to look at Dot. And then, silence. He lowered his arm, slowly blinking through the afterimage. The girl was still standing at the base of the tower, her hand resting against the crystal. Her silver eyes reflected the golden light. Calm but sharp dot around them, the ancient machines began to move. Years, bigger than ships, groaned awake. Thin blue lines spread across the walls and floors, lighting up a map of the whole chamber. No, of something even bigger. "What did you do?" he asked, breathless. She didn't look at him. "I woke it up," she replied, "and now they'll come." Before he could ask who, a sound rolled through the air, deep, metallic, like the roar of something alive. The ceiling above them cracked, and pieces of stone fell as a massive ship began to descend, black and silent, blotting out the faint light. From the sky above, "The hunters," she whispered Dot. He gripped his blaster tighter. "How many?" She glanced at him over her shoulder, and for the first time there was something like fear in her eyes. "All of them." He swallowed hard, but took a step closer to her anyway. "Then we'll fight all of them," he said. She turned back to the tower and pressed her palm flat against it. The ground shifted again. Sections of the chamber floor sank away, revealing narrow bridges that stretched out toward the edges of the cavern. Strange machines rose from the depths, weapons older than any war he'd ever known, but they weren't moving yet. "You need to hold them off," she said. "I need more time to wake the defenses." He stared at the black ship above, at the lines of red drones already pouring down, filling the air like a swarm of locusts. "More time? You've got to be kidding me," he muttered Dot, but he positioned himself at the nearest bridge anyway, raising his blaster. The air buzzed with electricity as the first drone screamed toward him. He fired, once, twice, watching the drone spark and fall into the depths. But for every one he hit, 3 more came. Behind him, she worked quickly, her hands dancing over the glowing patterns in the crystal, whispering something in a language he didn't understand. Faster would be nice. He shouted over the roar of engines and gunfire. "Then keep them busy." She snapped back. He grinned despite himself and fired again, dodging a blast that tore through the bridge and sent stones tumbling into the void below. Suddenly, something heavier landed on the far side of the bridge. Not a drone this time, but one of the hunters. It was taller than any human, wrapped in black armor that seemed to drink the light. Its long clawed arms glowed faint red, and its head tilted as it regarded him. "You are not authorized to stand here," it said in a low, mechanical voice. He took a step forward, raising his blaster. "Yeah?" he shot back. "Then come make me leave." The hunter moved fast, impossibly fast, leaping across the bridge, claws flashing. He rolled aside just in time, firing into its back. The blaster bolts sparked harmlessly off its armor. "That's not good," he muttered Dot. He ducked another swing of its claws and kicked at its leg, trying to throw it off balance. It didn't even. Flinched Dot just as the hunter raised both arms to strike. A sharp hum filled the air, and a bolt of golden energy shot from the tower, slamming into the hunter and sending it flying off the bridge. He glanced back. She stood there, one hand extended, her shield flaring bright. "Don't die yet," she called. "Thanks," he shouted back. "But maybe next time a little sooner." More hunters dropped from above, their claws digging into the stone as they climbed onto the bridges. The swarm of drones shrieked and circled, firing, bolts of red light that cracked the floor around him. He kept moving, ducking, firing, trying to keep them away from her. But it felt like holding back a flood. With his bare hands behind him, the tower pulsed again. Machines along the walls began to move, huge mechanical arms sliding into place, ancient cannons humming to life. She looked up at him then, her silver eyes fierce. "It's ready," she said. But before she could activate the defenses, a deafening crash split the chamber. A massive figure dropped onto the bridge, bigger than the hunters, wrapped in jagged black steel. Its eyes glowed white-hot, and the air around it shimmered with heat. The others froze, even the drones. He stared at it, heart hammering. "What is that?" He whispered. She stood slowly, her face pale now. "The first hunter," she said, "their commander." The creature straightened to its full height, its voice rumbling like thunder. "You cannot win," it said. "The stars already belong to us." But she stepped forward, her shoulders squared, her voice steady. "Then we'll take them back." The commander raised its massive claw, and the whole chamber seemed to hold its breath. He raised his blaster, though he knew it would do nothing. "You ready?" he asked her, his voice shaking but defiant. She gave him a faint, sharp smile. "Always." And then the whole world erupted into fire and light as the fight truly began. The truth chamber was chaos. Golden light and red fire clashed in the dark, filling the ancient hall with heat and noise. Machines that had slept for centuries now roared awake, firing brilliant beams that carved through the swarm of drones. Hunters leapt between the bridges, their claws tearing stone and steel. He ran, ducked, and fired, every breath tasting of smoke and fear. And still, she stood at the center of it all, her hand pressed to the crystal tower, her silver eyes burning brighter than ever. But she was struggling now. He could see her knees shaking, her shield flickering. She was pouring herself into the tower, holding back the enemy with sheer will. And yet more kept coming. The commander moved closer, slow but unstoppable, its black armor glowing, its claws cutting through the ancient floor like paper. He fired at it again, but the blasts bounced harmlessly away. "This isn't working," he shouted over the roar. "Keep them off me." She shouted back, her voice tight. "Just a little longer." He grit his teeth and turned back to the hunters. He didn't care if it wasn't working. He would fight anyway. A hunter lunged, and he rolled under it, planting a shot into its knee joint. It stumbled, and he kicked it off the bridge into the dark below. Another hunter followed, swinging. Wide, he ducked, fired into its chest, then slammed it with his shoulder, sending it tumbling. But even as he fought, his mind kept asking the question he hadn't dared speak yet. What was she? She had power no human could ever have. And yet she wasn't like them. The hunters, the drones, the commander. She had said she was made to kill, but she was fighting for them now. For him. "Why?" he muttered to himself, firing another shot. Then he heard her gasp. He spun toward her just in time to see her collapse to one knee, her hand slipping from the tower. The light faltered. "No." He yelled, running toward her. Gotch shook her head weakly, holding up a hand. "Stay there," she whispered. "Don't let them through." But he ignored her. He dropped to her side, grabbing her shoulders. "You're burning yourself out," he said, panic in his voice. "You'll kill yourself if you keep this up." She looked up at him then, and for the first time, he saw her fear. "If I stop," she said, "they win." He shook his head. "There has to be another way." She closed her eyes, her breathing shallow now. "There isn't," she whispered. "This is what I was made for." "Then tell me," he demanded. "Tell me the truth. What are you? What's in that cube? Why are you fighting them?" She opened her eyes and stared at him. "You want the truth?" she asked softly. Yes, he said, his voice hard. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she sat back, her hands falling to her lap, her eyes distant. I was made by them, she said finally. Not born, built, a weapon to end wars, to erase resistance from the stars. They called me Prototype Zero, the first and the last. They made me to destroy hope wherever it lived. He swallowed, staring at her. Then why? Because, she said, cutting him off, when they sent me to your world, I saw something they didn't expect. She looked up at him now, her silver eyes shimmering. You, she said. Your people, humans. You fight even when you know you'll lose. You get back up when everything tells you to stay down. You keep hoping, even in the dark. Her voice cracked then, just a little, and it broke something in me. I couldn't erase that. I didn't want to. He felt something heavy and sharp in his chest. So you ran, he said quietly. She nodded. I stole the cube, the core of everything. They built me to destroy, and I ran. And they've been hunting me ever since. He looked at the glowing tower, at the swarm of hunters closing in, at the commander watching silently with its burning eyes. He understood now. The cube wasn't just a weapon, Dot. It was the thing they feared most. The cube, it's hope, isn't it? He asked. She smiled faintly. It's a spark, she said. If I can light it here, it will spread. To every world they've crushed, to every person they've beaten down. And then they won't be able to stop it anymore. But her shoulders slumped. But I can't do it alone. Not anymore. He reached out and put a hand over hers. Her skin was cold, but the light in her eyes was still there. You're not alone, he said. Not while I'm still standing. Something like a laugh escaped her lips, soft, broken, but real. Then the commander's voice rolled through the air like thunder. Enough. End this. The hunters surged forward, faster than before. The bridges cracked under their weight. The commander raised its claws, and the walls of the chamber began to collapse. She looked up at him, her silver eyes blazing now. Then fight with me, she said. He tightened his grip on his blaster. Until the end, he replied. She pulled herself to her feet, the cube glowing brighter now in her hand. No, she said. Until the beginning. And then she pressed the cube into the tower, and the chamber erupted in white light, blinding, deafening, as everything they thought they knew began to change. The final stand light from the cube was blinding. It poured through the chamber like a flood, filling every crack, washing over the ancient walls and bridges. For a moment, just a moment, everything stopped. Even the hunters froze mid-step. Even the commander lowered its burning claws, its head tilting as though confused. He shielded his eyes, blinking through the glow. And when it faded, he gasped. The crystal tower had changed. It was no longer just stone and light. It was alive now, vines of golden energy curling around it, humming softly. And above it, a faint sphere of light hovered, beating like a heart. Stood at the base of the tower, her hand still pressed to the crystal, her silver eyes shining brighter than ever before. But her face was pale, her breath uneven. What did you do? He whispered, staring at the tower. She looked back at him, and there was a strange calm in her voice when she spoke. I finished what they started, she said. And now it begins. Before he could ask what she meant, the commander let out a sound that shook the chamber, a deep, metallic roar of fury. The red lights of the hunters flared brighter, and they moved as one, charging forward across the bridges, claws ready. She pulled her hand away from the tower and stumbled back. He caught her arm, steadying her. You can't fight them like this, he said, his voice tight. You're burning out. She shook her head. It doesn't matter, she murmured. This is what I was made for. You keep saying that, he snapped, but you weren't made to die here. She actually smiled then, faint but real. Then help me prove it, his jaw tightened. I already said, until the end. No, she said softly, meeting his eyes. Until the beginning. He tightened his grip on his blaster and turned toward the hunter's dot. The bridges shook as they charged. The commander leapt down onto the main bridge, landing with a crash that sent cracks racing through the stone. You cannot win, it said, voice echoing through the cavern. You were never meant to win. But she stood tall beside him now, the light from the tower gathering around her. Then we were never meant to stop fighting, she replied, and then everything happened at once. He fired first, shots sparking across the hunter's armor, slowing them just enough for her to raise her hand and unleash a wave of light that knocked several of them off the bridge into the dark below. The commander moved faster now, impossibly fast, closing the gap between them with each heavy step. He aimed at its chest and fired again and again, but the shots barely scorched its armor. Stepped forward, summoning more of the tower's energy, golden lines weaving up her arms. Keep them off me, she whispered. Always, he said. The hunters closed in, claws flashing, eyes blazing, but he didn't give an inch. He ducked, fired, rolled, kicked one into the abyss, then swung the butt of his blaster into another's face. For every one that fell, two more came, but he refused to fall back. Then the commander was there, towering over them, and swung its massive claws down. He shoved her out of the way just in time, the blow shattering the bridge where they had stood. She stumbled but caught herself, her hands still glowing with the tower's power. Do it, he shouted. Whatever you're going to do, do it now. She met his gaze, her silver eyes fierce and sad all at once. You won't survive it, she said quietly. He smirked faintly, wiping blood from his cheek. Then you'd better make it worth it. She turned back to the tower, pressed both hands to the crystal, and whispered something he couldn't hear. Golden vines of energy wrapped around her completely now, lifting her slightly off the ground, and the light became blinding again. The commander roared and lunged at her, but he stepped between them, planting his feet and firing until the blaster overheated and burned his hand. Not today, he growled. The commander swung again, sending him flying against the stone, but he dragged himself back to his feet, staggering toward her. Just a little longer, she whispered. You've got it, he panted, firing one last. Shot at the hunter's dot, then the tower's light flared so bright it turned the darkness into day. The ground shook violently, and a shockwave ripped through the chamber, sending hunters tumbling into the abyss. The commander froze mid-strike, its armor cracking, white light spilling out from within. No, the commander roared, but its voice broke apart into static before it could finish. The golden vines lashed out, wrapping around the commander and pulling it into the heart of the tower. Then silence, not just silence. He collapsed to his knees, gasping, staring at the tower. She still floated there, but now her eyes were closed, her body limp in the golden light. No, he whispered, forcing himself up and stumbling toward her. No, no, no. Don't you dare. He reached her just as the vines gently lowered her to the ground. Her silver eyes fluttered open, faint but alive. Did it work? She asked weakly. He looked around at the dead hunters, the shattered drones, the golden light still pulsing through the cavern, and nodded. Double quotes. Yeah, he said softly. You did it. She managed the faintest smile. Then it's your turn now, she murmured. My turn? He asked, confused. Her eyes met his, and her voice was almost a whisper. To show them what humans do when they're free. And then her eyes closed, and the tower dimmed, leaving only a faint glow, and her quiet breathing in the silence. He looked back at the ruined bridges, at the dark void beyond, at the faint light spreading outward from the tower like ripples. He tightened his fists, standing taller than he ever had before. "Then let's show them," he said, his voice low but full of fire. The final stand was over. But the real war, their war, had just begun. Asterisk the yaw. Choiceth Cavern was quiet now. The golden light from the tower had dimmed to a soft, steady glow, no longer blinding, but still alive. The floor was littered with the broken remains of hunters and drones, their bodies cold and dark. The air was heavy with dust and smoke, but beneath it all, there was something else to Dot, something he hadn't felt since the beginning. Hope that he knelt beside her, his fingers resting lightly on her wrist. Her pulse was faint but steady, her breathing shallow but even. "You're still here," he murmured. "You kept your promise." She stirred slightly, her silver eyes fluttering open. "So did you," she whispered, her voice weak but still sharp. "You fought." He smiled faintly, though his chest still felt heavy. "Someone had to." She let out a quiet laugh, more like a breath. "Always the human way." He looked up at the tower then, its faint golden light still pulsing like a heartbeat. And he realized it wasn't finished yet. The light wasn't spreading outward anymore. It was waiting. He stood slowly, staring at the crystal, feeling its quiet power humming through the air. "What now?" he asked softly. She opened her eyes wider, looking at him with something like sadness and pride. "Now you choose?" she said. "Choose what?" He asked Dot. She pushed herself up weakly, her hand reaching toward the tower. "The core is awake," she explained, "but it's waiting for a final command. It can finish what I started, or it can burn everything. It needs someone to decide." He stared at her in shock. "What do you mean?" "I thought this was the plan. You wake it up. It spreads hope to the rest of the galaxy. We win." She shook her head faintly. "Nothing is that simple. The core holds everything. Light and dark. Creation and destruction. I can't give it the order. I was made from them. It won't trust me. But you," she looked up at him, her silver eyes gleaming in the quiet. "You're human, and humans still believe they can change the story." He stared at the tower, feeling the weight of her words sink into his bones. The choice wasn't just his. It was bigger than him, bigger than both of them. "What happens if I choose wrong?" he asked quietly. "Everything ends," she replied simply. His hands tightened into fists. He glanced at her, still sitting there, still breathing, still watching him with those strange, bright eyes. And he thought about all the times he'd wanted to give up, all the times he'd fallen and stood up anyway, because that was what humans did. He stepped closer to the tower, feeling the air grow warmer around him. The crystal glowed brighter as he approached, golden vines of light reaching out like they already knew him. "You sure about this?" he asked over his shoulder. She smiled faintly. "I was never sure about anything. That's why I needed you." He took another breath and placed his hands against the crystal. It was warm, and a live dot of voice, low and deep, filled his mind. Input received. Final directive pending. Choose. He closed his eyes, and he thought about her, about Earth, about all the worlds out there that had been broken, crushed, under the weight of the hunter's dot, about the way she had stood in front of the enemy, even when she was falling apart, about the way she had looked at him and whispered, "Will you fight for me?" He opened his eyes again, his jaw tight, his hands steady. "I choose." His voice cracked, but he forced the words out. "To light the stars again." The crystal pulsed under his palms. A warm light spilled over him, brighter and brighter, climbing up the walls, filling the chamber until it felt like the sun itself was rising. He could feel it, the core waking fully now, its power spreading outward. He saw flashes of distant worlds, dark cities suddenly glowing, skies filled with ships breaking free from enemy control, people standing, fighting, smiling. He staggered back as the light faded slightly, leaving the tower glowing steadily. Behind him, it was done. He turned back to her, his chest heaving. She was leaning against the wall, her silver eyes watching him with quiet awe. "You did it," she whispered. He gave her a faint grin. "No," he said, "we did it." She lowered her gaze for a moment, as though letting herself believe it for the first time. Then she pushed herself to her feet, unsteady but standing. He stepped toward her and held out his hand. She looked at it, then up at him, and for the first time, she smiled, a real smile, and placed her hand in his behind them. The golden light of the tower stretched higher and higher, rising into the sky, scattering into 1,000 sparks that drifted outward toward the stars. He glanced at her and asked softly, "What now?" She squeezed his hand gently and whispered, "Now we fight for them." And together they walked toward the light, leaving the ruins behind, ready to face whatever came next. The stars burned brighter that night, and somewhere, far away, the hunters watched, and for the first time, they were afraid.